What's up, YouTube, and welcome back to another episode of Homebrew Subaru. Got a couple different things going on for this episode. I am going to work on the car just a little bit. I got some things to kind of update on as well because I haven't done much to the car, and I kind of thought that I would be a little bit further along than I am, but of course I'm always behind. But the BMW that I purchased, I was waiting on a crank sensor to come for that car, and was that last weekend? Last weekend, I went to go put the crank sensor in the car. I got it in there and charged the battery up. It chugged and chugged, but wouldn't start. So I don't either something's going on with the ECU in it. It's not being powered up, or it's got a bad ECU in it. I haven't taken the time to diagnose it at all. So pretty much the next steps are, from what I was told, it had spark, so I'm gonna have to check for injector pulse and kind of go from there, because it's got a new cam sensor and a new crank sensor, and like I remember replacing the ignition in that car, so it looks like it leaning towards the ECU. There's an ECU problem with it, so that's kind of sitting there for now. I'm gonna have to kind of arrange the time where I can go and then have someone kind of maybe with me to actually look to see if there's spark and see if there's injection pulse. Either that or use my phone to record it. The day I did the crank sensor, it was pouring rain, and I was like soaked to the bone right through my clothes. Right where I was working, it's like a little river decided to form right there, and so I was pretty much laying in it. But what happened after that is, I was kind of thinking I was going to get that car to run, so I'd planned to put insurance on it. But when it didn't start up, I decided, okay, I'm just going to have to go renew the insurance on the Impreza. So I go to the insurance place, and I sit down in the chair, and I go to lean forward, but my clothes are so wet that they restrict my back, and they strain my back, so of course I like half pulled a muscle, which is like, you know, it's just one of those things I've been going through with life. But so yeah, the last few days I've just kind of been recovering or whatever, but today I feel a lot better. Something else, I got the other 240 that was outside. It's gone. I filled it up with all the scrap metal that I had sitting at the side of the house. I pulled a bunch more small parts off of it. I did grab the hood off of it. I left the front bumper. Another guy that actually bought a 240 here in town, he came by and got some parts off of it. So anyway, that car is now gone. I kind of swept up the parking spot, and then actually the street sweeper came by like a couple days later, so it's all nice and clean in front of my place. And I was thinking the either BMW or Impreza was going to be sitting out there, but not yet. So the 240, I have got a few more things done on it. Not very much, of course, but new master cylinder for the clutch. It's all bolted to the firewall. It's not hooked up to the pedal yet, just because I'd rather get it fastened to the transmission before I start doing an adjustment. There is an adjuster on the end of the rod. New ISR braided line. That is mainly for converting an automatic car to a manual 5-speed. It eliminates the clutch dampener down on the frame, and then I've also got a new slave cylinder. Everything's kind of fastened somewhat, but it's just sitting there just because obviously the drivetrain still has to go into the car. I did get out the return line, the factory return line that was with the car. That would have had the hose that would have kind of went across the frame there, or the subframe. But now I've got that all taken off, and that pretty much is going to have to loop up to the reservoir here. So I got some hose. I think I may have got the wrong size hose, but I'll have to see. And then aside from that, I don't think I really did much of anything else. But today I kind of want to work on the wiring harness. I'm going to get the rest of it cleaned up and put some lume on it. I may actually run some battery cable. So I bought some, I believe it's 4 gauge. So I got a bunch of 4 gauge in red, and I'm pretty sure I have an entire roll of black over there. So I'll probably run battery cables through the firewall to the back of the car. May dig out the battery box and just sit it back there. I did get a bunch of more things, like I got some 10 gauge wire, just because I'll probably want to run some grounds onto the frame, and kind of have to figure that stuff out. I got a bunch of clamps for the turbo inlet. So yeah, I mean, it's not going to be a whole lot, and it's just me just going to be talking a lot probably, but yeah, I'll get started. And oh yeah, we get some fuel. I get some fuel hose, so I'm gonna do the fuel lines as well. I know I ordered a fuel filter, and I had a fuel filter for this thing, but I can't find it, and I'm not so sure like where it went to. I've looked through all the boxes. I can't find the thing, and I was gonna get one yesterday, but I was like, no, I'll have one more look for it. And so if I find the filter, then at least I can run some new fuel lines on there. I'd rather have that done before the engine goes in, just because I've got the added room right now. So probably all I'm just going to do is clean up a bunch of the small little stuff, do the fuel lines, probably loom up the harness, maybe run those battery cables, see if I can throw in anything else. So after a small reconnaissance mission, I found the fuel filter. I actually had it stashed away because I knew I was going to eventually do the swap, and I bought the filter for the old engine, but I just figured, well, I'm going to swap out the engine, I'll just put it in when I do the engine. So I found the filter. I have 5/16 fuel injection hose, basically the same stuff that I used for the Impreza's intake. So I think I bought 6 feet of that, and then I have plenty of fuel injection clamps that I bought the last time I did that intake on the Impreza last year. Just something good to have on hand. Now, I'm glad I bought that many of them. So I'm going to sit the camera down, kind of sitting over top the subframe, pointed at the fuel filter and the lines, just so you can kind of see how it's going to be laid out. I'm going to use all the hose, make it a little bit longer than what I need, because I don't want to do it twice. And I think I'm probably going to need most of the length anyway, because the engine's going to sit quite far ahead. I mean, it's a lot bigger engine, so yeah. So now that I've got the fuel lines done, I'm going to move on to the lower harness. It might look a little bit more intimidating than it is, but these connections all go up into that front fuse panel. That's where they all unplugged from, and basically I've kept all the orientation just by zip tying them all together here. But from what I can tell, basically the connections consist of alternator. So you've got a ground, the main power charging lead, the exciting lead, and the reference, I guess. This one's not actually supposed to go that way, I don't think. So the ground is actually like the casing is so old it just cracks and breaks. So I'm going to cut this quite far back and give it a new length of wire in that 10 gauge that I bought and put a new terminal on the end. This terminal looks pretty old and crusty, but I might end up cutting that back just a tiny bit and then replacing that terminal as well. And that's just the connector that plugs into the alternator. The alternator on the RB is the same as the KA, so that will just directly plug right in. Over at this end, these two wires, I have no idea what they go to, but I'll try and figure them out. This is the starter exciting lead, and this is just a dummy connector that's been left like that, so I might even just cut that short and eliminate that. Leading on to the end of the harness is all the connections for the transmission. So there'll be like a neutral switch, reverse light switch, output speed sensor, and there's something else going back there that I haven't quite figured out yet. But I know it's all going back in that direction, so I can at least loom it up to that point. And some of the wiring needs to be repaired down there later on anyway, after the transmission's in place. So I'm just going to go ahead and start, like you can see there's still grease on the thing. I might even give it one more wipe down and then start putting loom on it and taping it all back up after I've repaired this wire, of course, and maybe this one too.
Girls with their nails done now. Girls with their nails done. I like the girls with their nails done. Girls with their girls with their nails done now. Girls with their nails done. The girls with their nails done. Girls with their nails done.
So there's basically the lower harness all loomed up and taped. Obviously looks a lot cleaner than what it did. And I've got that one lead all repaired. This one I just decided to leave it as is. Because I've got this thing kind of set the way it is, and the way I'm going to lay it through the car, it should be pretty easy to disconnect and take out and repair if I have to. But I don't think it's going to cause me a problem. So I kind of left this long end open because the car used an output speed sensor, but the transmission going in actually has a speedometer cable. So I'm going to have to kind of figure out that conversion, whether I can use it or not. I'm not quite sure yet. I may actually have to go with like a GPS speedometer eventually. I don't need a speedometer right away, but you know, it's something I'm going to want. It doesn't have to be like precise down to the kilometer, but I do want some kind of speedometer. So yeah, that's basically the way it's going to be, and just kind of show you how it's going to lay into the car. So first of all, I was playing around with this connector. I decided to start on doing some tape, and pretty much the terminal started falling off the end here. This is obviously the reason why I was having trouble starting the car. See, I just had that battery fail, but anyways. So these terminals pretty much fell right off here. This is completely corroded and definitely why the car wasn't starting up. Obviously I'm going to have to cut them back and replace pretty much the wiring and the terminals. I'm pretty sure these are power inputs for this complete fuse panel. But the way this box is going to be laid in here will be something like this. And then all the connectors should wrap around this side. And then the harness that I just did will kind of lay something like this, connecting up into the box. I left this little thing here so it can be zip tied nice and tight there, and kind of go along the maybe I'll zip tie it to the fuel rails. Anyways, tons of clearance and it's nice and tight and clean. So that part of that is done. I'm just trying to make sure that I go through everything as much as I can. Finding something like this, you know, when you're an hour and a half down the highway, kind of sucks. You know, you wonder why you're stuck on the side of the highway, car won't start, and it's something that's just completely overlooked. I don't want this to be like that, so I've really gone through everything on the car, and I'm nailed everything as far as I can tell. But yeah, the engine should be ready to go, getting going in. I have pretty much everything else. I've got the rad, I've got the hoses, I've got the intercooler, I've got all the piping. I've kind of got everything sorted out for a turbo inlet. So it'll just be going through the wiring for the most part. Everything else is kind of bolt in, and shouldn't take very much fabrication at all. So, but anyways, video's gone on long enough, and I've just been babbling. I know a lot of people don't watch the babble, but if you like this video, definitely give it a thumbs up. And if you are new here or you haven't already, please consider hitting that subscribe button for me. Leave your questions and comments further down below. And I'll see you in the next one.